Alright, so imagine this. You come home after a quiet 3-day fishing trip, sunburned, tired, thinking about nothing but a cold drink and maybe a shower. And instead, you pull into your driveway, and your gate is gone. Not open, not broken, gone. Like it never existed. Just a wide, empty mouth where your driveway used to begin, and sitting off to the side of your lawn. Twisted metal, bent hinges, pieces of something you recognize instantly because you built it with your own hands. Yeah, that kind of gone. I just sat there in my truck for a second, engine still running, trying to process it. Like, maybe I'm at the wrong house. Maybe I turned into the wrong driveway. But no, same gravel crunch, same mailbox leaning a little too far to the left, same oak tree casting that long shadow across the yard. My place. My gate. Or what used to be my gate. Now this wasn't some cheap prefab thing you order online. Alright, this was custom, solid iron, hand-welded in my workshop, took me weeks after work, nights and weekends, sparks flying, grinding edges smooth, and right across the arch I welded my family name. Not for show, not for anyone else, just because it meant something. My old man used to say, if you're gonna put your name on something, you better make sure it stands. And it did, until it didn't. So I step out, boots hitting gravel, and the first thing I notice, there's a bright yellow notice taped to my fence post, flapping in the wind like it's proud of itself. I walk over, rip it off, and it reads, removed per HOA safety compliance. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so ridiculous it didn't even feel real. HOA? I'm not in their HOA. Not even close. See, I own about 5 acres of land just outside this upscale gated community. Real polished kind of place. You know the type. Brick walls, trimmed hedges, private security, keypad entry, the whole. We don't wave at you unless you match the landscaping vibe. And then there's me. Workshop out back, a couple of trucks, tools everywhere, nothing fancy, just honest work. And apparently, that offended somebody. Now the story I pieced together later. And trust me, it didn't take long. Was that while I was out fishing, the president of their HOA, guy named Bradley Pierce, clean haircut, pressed polo, that permanent half smile like he's always explaining something obvious to someone he thinks is beneath him. Yeah, that guy. He decided my gate was a problem. Not dangerous, not illegal, not blocking anything. No, his exact wording, according to one of the contractors who didn't realize I'd be the one asking questions later, was that it disrupted the aesthetic continuity of the community entrance. Let me translate that for you. My place looked too blue-collar for his curated little postcard neighborhood. So what does Bradley do? He hires a crew, actual professionals, to come onto my property, cut through my gate, remove it completely, and dump it like scrap metal on my lawn. All while I'm gone. No call, no letter, no attempt to verify ownership. Just a yellow notice like that makes it official. And here's the part that really got me. They didn't even take it with them. They just left it there. Bent. Broken. Like it was trash. Like I was trash. I stood there for a while, just staring at it. And I could feel that slow kind of anger building. You know the kind. Not loud, not explosive, just steady. Cold. The kind that doesn't rush you into doing something stupid. It makes you think. Because see, Bradley made one very big assumption. He assumed I'd just fix it. Replace it. Maybe even upgrade it to something that fit his little vision of the neighborhood. He assumed wrong. Because what Bradley didn't understand, and what most of those folks behind those pretty brick walls didn't understand, is that the only road in and out of their entire community cuts right across the corner of my land. Yeah, not theirs. Mine. Now, for about 20 years, nobody made a big deal out of it. Back when the place was first being developed, the original builder had a handshake agreement with my father. Temporary access, just until they sorted out proper easements and paperwork. My dad was the kind of man who believed a handshake meant something, so he said yes. Temporary. That word matters. And somewhere along the way, that temporary arrangement turned into an assumption. Then that assumption turned into entitlement. And eventually, it turned into Bradley thinking he could walk onto my land and start making decisions. That's where he crossed the line. Because the moment they touched that gate, that handshake expired. I didn't yell. I didn't call the police right away. I didn't even knock on Bradley's door. I went inside, poured myself a drink, and sat down at my kitchen table with that yellow notice in front of me, and I started thinking. Not about revenge. About leverage. And once you start thinking in terms of leverage, the whole situation changes. See, people like Bradley, they operate on control, rules, appearance, authority. They build systems where they feel like they're the ones in charge. But those systems only work as long as nobody challenges the foundation. And I knew something he clearly forgot. That road, that wasn't part of his system. That was part of mine. So the next morning, I woke up early, grabbed a folder I hadn't opened in years, property surveys, land boundaries, old agreements, and I drove straight into the county office. No rush, no drama, just calm, polite, patient, the way you act when you already know you're about to change the entire game. Because sometimes, the best response isn't loud. It's precise. And Bradley Pierce, he was about to learn exactly what that feels like. All right, let's pause the story for a second, because this is where things get interesting, not just emotionally, but legally and psychologically too. According to standard procedure, an HOA only has authority over properties that are officially within its jurisdiction, meaning you signed into it, agreed to its rules, and your land is legally part of that association. If you're outside that boundary, they don't get to enforce anything on you. Not aesthetics, not structures, not community standards. Nothing. From a legal perspective, what Bradley did wasn't just overstepping. It potentially crossed into trespassing and property destruction. You don't just walk onto someone's land and remove a structure, even if you think it's an eyesore. There's permits, notices, due process, all the boring stuff that exists specifically to stop this kind of thing from happening. But here's where it gets deeper. This is a psychological trap. HOAs often operate on perceived authority. People comply because everyone else complies. Over time, that creates this illusion that the HOA's power extends further than it actually does. Bradley wasn't just enforcing rules. He was acting on that illusion, assuming no one would push back. And honestly, most people wouldn't. But that assumption? That's exactly where he lost control of the situation. So the next morning, I walk into the county office like it's just another Tuesday, no attitude, no urgency, just a guy with a folder under his arm and a very clear idea of what he needs. You'd be surprised how far calm gets you in places like that. People expect anger, they brace for it. But when you show up steady, polite, almost casual, it throws them off, and more importantly, it gets things done. I sit down with the clerk, slide over my property survey, and I say, "Hey, I just need to confirm something. That access road running along the east boundary, still legally mine, right?" She looks it over, types a few things, cross-checks the parcel map, and then she nods. "Yes, sir. That section is fully within your property line. I don't see any recorded easement." That right there, that was the moment. Not dramatic, not loud, just a quiet confirmation that everything I thought was true was true. So I follow it up. If I wanted to restrict access completely, I could do that. She pauses for a second, gives me that look like she knows exactly what I'm asking without me saying it outright. Then she goes, "As long as you're not violating any emergency access ordinances or existing agreements, yes. You have the right to control access to your land." There it is. Clean. Simple. Legal. From a legal perspective, that was my green light. Now I didn't waste time. I filed the necessary land use notice right there. Nothing flashy, just making it official that I was exercising control over that portion of my property. Paperwork stamped before lunch. No drama. Then I made a call. There's a local contractor I've worked with before. Good guys, don't ask too many questions as long as everything's above board. I told them exactly what I needed. Concrete barriers, the big ones, the kind you see on highways, solid, heavy, unmistakable. By mid-afternoon, we're standing out there at the edge of that road, the same road those residents had been driving through like they owned it for the past 2 decades. Trucks roll in, flatbeds loaded with barriers, engines rumbling, dust kicking up, and I just stand there with my arms crossed, watching it unfold piece by piece. No yelling, no announcement, no warning, just action. One by one, those barriers come off the truck, set down, aligned, locked into place. 8 feet of solid, you're not coming through here anymore. And right in the center, I had them leave a small gap just long enough for me to walk through, so I could place the sign myself. Simple whiteboard. Black letters. Private property. No trespassing. I stepped back, looked at it for a second, and I won't lie, there was a certain satisfaction in how quiet it all was. No confrontation, no spectacle. Just a line drawn exactly where it should have been drawn from the beginning. By nightfall, the road was closed. And that's when the real show started. See, people don't notice systems until they stop working. That road, it wasn't just a convenience. It was their lifeline. The only entrance. The only exit. The first wave hit early the next morning. Commuters. Folks heading to work, coffee in hand, expecting the usual smooth ride out of their perfectly curated neighborhood. And instead, they're met with concrete. Confusion at first. Cars slowing down. People leaning out their windows, trying to figure out what's going on. Then frustration. U-turns. A few attempts to squeeze around the edges didn't work. Those barriers weren't going anywhere. By mid-morning, it escalated. Delivery trucks backed up along the road, drivers arguing into their radios, packages sitting in the back with nowhere to go. School buses pulling up, kids being dropped off at the main road, parents scrambling, trying to piece together a plan on the fly. And then came the walking. You'd see them, residents in business clothes, gym outfits, whatever they had on that day, parked along the highway shoulder, making that half-mile walk into the neighborhood. Some annoyed, some embarrassed, some just stunned. Because for the first time, they realized something. They didn't control their access. Someone else did. And that realization spreads fast. By the afternoon, phones were ringing. HOA emails going out. Emergency meetings being scheduled. And right on cue, Bradley showed up. I was out by my workshop when his SUV pulled in, fast, tires crunching gravel a little harder than necessary. He steps out, sunglasses on, jaw tight, that polished composure cracked just enough to show what's underneath. "Hey," he calls out, already halfway to shouting. "What the hell is this?" I wipe my hands on a rag, take my time walking over, no rush. "Afternoon, Bradley." He gestures back toward the road like I somehow don't know what he's talking about. "You can't block that road. That's illegal." There it is. That word. Illegal. I almost smiled. Because this is where people like Bradley expect the conversation to end. They throw out a word like that, confident it'll scare you into backing down. But I didn't back down. I walked back into the shop, grabbed a copy of my property survey, and handed it to him. "Take a look." He doesn't even want it at first, just glances at it like it's beneath him. But then something catches his eye, and I can actually see the shift. His expression tightens, eyes scanning the lines, the boundaries, the part where that road clearly sits inside my land. That's not right," he mutters. "It is," I say, calm as ever. "And there's no easement. No recorded right-of-way. That road belongs to me." Silence for a second. Not long, but enough. Then the anger comes back, sharper this time. "We've been using that road for 20 years. "Yeah," I nod. "With permission. Temporary permission. You can't just take that away." "I didn't," I reply. "You did, when you tore down my gate." That hit. I could tell. Because now he's not arguing facts anymore. He's reacting. "This isn't over," he snaps. "We'll take legal action." I shrug. "You should. So will I." And I meant it. Because while all of this was unfolding, I'd already filed. Trespassing. Destruction of private property. Unauthorized modification without permits. I even sent the county photos of what they did, before and after shots of my gate, timestamps, everything. See, Bradley thought he was playing offense. But he walked right into defense. And defense, when it's built right, is a lot harder to break. Now here's where things take a turn neither of us fully controlled. Word got out. Maybe it was one of the contractors. Maybe a resident posted about it. Maybe someone just saw the chaos and called it in, doesn't matter. Within a couple of days, local media picked it up. And once that happens, you're not just dealing with a dispute anymore. You're dealing with public opinion. The headline? Something along the lines of, "Luxury community locked out after dispute with neighbor." Yeah, not exactly the image Bradley was going for. Clips started circulating. Footage of residents walking along the roadside. Interviews with confused homeowners. Shots of those concrete barriers sitting there like immovable facts. And the comments? Oh, the comments were brutal. People don't like stories about power being abused, especially when it looks like someone tried to bully the wrong person. Words like entitled, overreach, karma, they get thrown around real quick. That pressure builds. Fast. By the end of the week, Bradley wasn't showing up angry anymore. He was showing up careful. This time, he didn't come alone. 2 other board members with him, all of them a little less polished, a little more realistic. We stood out there near the same spot, same gravel, same sun beating down, but the tone was different. Look, Bradley starts, not yelling this time, not even close. We'd like to resolve this. I nod. I'm listening. He takes a breath. We'll replace your gate. Exactly as it was. Cover all damages. And we're prepared to formalize an easement for the road. There it is. The shift. From assumption to negotiation. And compensation? I ask. He hesitates, just for a second. Yes. Monthly. Now we're talking. But here's the thing. I didn't answer right away. I let that silence sit there for a moment, just long enough for them to feel it. Because leverage isn't just about what you have, it's about how you use it. Finally, I nod. All right, here's how this goes. And I laid it out. Simple, clear, no room for interpretation. First, my gate gets rebuilt exactly the way it was. Same design, same materials, same name across the arch. Not close, not similar, exact. Second, you put it in writing that no one from your HOA ever touches that gate again without my explicit consent. Not for aesthetics, not for safety, not for anything. Third, we draft a legal easement. Properly recorded. 99 years. Monthly payment. Terms defined. No more handshakes. They exchanged looks. Quiet ones. The kind where decisions are made without words. And then, Bradley nods. Done. Just like that. A week later, crews were back. But this time, they weren't cutting anything down. They were building. Carefully. Precisely. Under my supervision. Piece by piece, that gate came back to life. Iron-shaped, welded, set into place. And when they finished that arch, when my family name went back up where it belonged, I stood there for a second, just taking it in. Not because of the win, but because of what it represented. Control. Boundaries. Respect. Things that should have been there from the start. And the road? Open back up. Legally. Properly. With terms. Now every time Bradley drives past, he slows down just a little. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But I do. Because right there at the entrance stands that gate. The one he paid to tear down. And then paid a whole lot more to put back up. So what's the lesson here? Because yeah, it's a satisfying story. It's got that clean, guy pushes too far, gets put in his place kind of ending. But if that's all you take from it, you're missing the part that actually matters. The lesson here is boundaries don't mean anything until you're willing to enforce them. And I don't mean yelling or getting into someone's face or trying to out-aggressive the other person. That's what people expect. That's what escalates things into something messy and unpredictable. What actually works, the thing most people overlook, is quiet, informed, deliberate action. See, Bradley didn't think he was doing anything outrageous. In his mind, he was maintaining standards, protecting property values, doing his job. That's how these things usually go. People wrap control in language that sounds reasonable, and over time, they stop questioning whether they actually have the right to enforce it. This is a psychological trap, the kind where authority isn't really challenged because everyone assumes someone else already validated it. And when nobody pushes back, that illusion just keeps growing. Until one day, it hits something solid. From a legal perspective, none of this was complicated. That's the wild part. There was no hidden loophole, no genius strategy, no courtroom drama. It came down to something very basic: ownership, documentation, and process. I had the land. I had the records. And once I followed the proper steps, everything else fell into place. According to standard procedure, if someone crosses onto your property and alters it without permission, that's not a misunderstanding. That's a violation. And the system is actually designed to handle that, if you're willing to use it. But most people don't. Not because they can't, but because it feels overwhelming. Paperwork, offices, legal language, it's intimidating. And honestly, people like Bradley count on that. They operate in that gray area where most folks would rather just avoid the hassle than challenge them. That's why this situation turned out the way it did. Not because I was smarter, or tougher, or more aggressive, but because I slowed down and played it the right way. I didn't react, I responded. And there's a difference. Reaction is emotional, fast, messy. It gives the other side something to push against. Response, that's controlled. It's intentional. It shifts the ground under the situation instead of fighting on top of it. And once the ground shifts, everything built on top of it has to adjust. That's exactly what happened here. The moment that road was blocked, not illegally, not impulsively, but properly, with documentation and authority, that entire dynamic flipped. Suddenly, the people who thought they had control were the ones asking for permission. That's not revenge. That's correction. And here's another piece people don't talk about enough. Respect isn't something you can demand, especially not through force or intimidation. If anything, that just guarantees the opposite. Real respect comes from clarity, from consistency, from making it very clear where your line is and what happens when someone crosses it. Once that's established, most conflicts don't even get that far. But if they do, you better be ready to follow through. Because an unprotected boundary isn't a boundary, it's a suggestion. Now, I know some people are going to watch this and say, yeah, but you got lucky. And sure, timing plays a role in everything. But luck doesn't file paperwork. Luck doesn't pull property records. Luck doesn't set concrete barriers in place and stand behind them. Preparation does. Awareness does. And maybe most importantly, patience does. Because this could have gone a very different way if I let anger take the wheel. One argument, one bad decision, one moment of escalation. And suddenly it's not about property anymore. It's about conflict. And conflict, that's a whole different game. So if there's anything I'd want you to take from this, it's this. Know what's yours. Understand the rules that actually apply to you. Not the ones people assume, not the ones they try to impose, but the real ones, the ones backed by law and record. And when something doesn't sit right, don't rush. Pause. Look at the situation from a step back and ask yourself, what's the leverage here? Not emotional leverage, real leverage. The kind that holds up when things get tested. Because once you find that, you don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to threaten. You just need to act. And that's usually more than enough. Now I'm curious, what would you have done in that situation? Would you have replaced the gate and let it go? Or would you have taken it further? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because honestly, these situations aren't as rare as people think, and the way you handle them, that says a lot more than the situation itself.